Hi everyone, this is Ananda. Today I will talk about what is true yoga and what exactly yoga is all about. But before we start, I would like to read a prayer from Whispers from Eternity. O holy vibration, boom on the shores of my soul, break the limiting boundary of my consciousness in the body, reverberate through my body, mind, soul, my surroundings, the cities, the earth, the planets, the universe, and every particle of creation. Unite my consciousness with cosmic consciousness. O omnipresent cosmic sound of Amen or Om, reverberate through me, expanding my consciousness from the body to the universe, and teach me to feel in thee the all-permeating perennial bliss. Many people think that yoga is only the yoga postures, but yoga is much more than that. The deeper purpose of the yoga postures is not to merely give you a healthy body, which is a good thing, but the true purpose of the yoga postures, is to prepare the body to serve as a temple for communion with the infinite Lord and with those exalted beings who live always in His light. By stopping with the postures, people miss the true purpose and the essence of what yoga can actually offer. Yoga means union with the divine. The purpose of yoga is to achieve the highest goal of life, which Swami Shankara called Sat Chit Ananda, ever existing, ever conscious, ever new bliss. Now, if you want to understand yoga, if you want to understand spiritual truths, the first and the most important thing is to get to the central point of it. When Yogananda was studying with his guru Sri Yukteswar, they were studying Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, and for week after week after week, they would stick with one aphorism. And after 8 months, I think they had covered about 5 aphorisms, or something very small. And you know what aphorism is. I'll tell you. The first aphorism of Patanjali Yoga Sutras is, now we pick up the study of yoga. That's an aphorism. The next aphorism is Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirod, which means yoga is the neutralization of the whirlpools of feeling, of consciousness. There is a tremendous depth in just that one aphorism. We can write a whole book about it, and I'll explain it to you in a moment. So they study one aphorism each week, they talk about it, they'd meditate on it, they'd go deeper and deeper into it, and every time Yogananda would say to his guru, can't we go to the next one, sir? And Sri Yukteswar would say, you haven't got the full meaning out of this one yet, stick with it. When Yogananda's mind would wander, Sri Yukteswar would bring it back, and after 8 months of this kind of training, he closed the book and said, you don't have to read anymore. You don't have to read any scriptures anymore. Any book you pick up, you'll be able to understand because you've gotten down to the central point of it. So it is that with this video, I'll try to convey to you the real meaning of yoga as the great masters like Sri Yukteswar and Paramhansa Yogananda taught it. Because when you understand this, you will then have the key to spiritual truth and eternal freedom. First, let me emphasize that the essential teaching of India, which yoga comes from, is called Sanatan Dharma, and it's the real name of Hinduism. Sanatan Dharma is the Sanskrit word and it means the eternal religion. And the eternal religion means that truth which the sages in all countries and all religions have experienced. It doesn't mean the religion of India except to the extent that the religion of India expresses that truth. But that truth is deeper than any kind of scripture can possibly express. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says to Arjuna, even a little practice of that inward religion will save you from dire fears and colossal sufferings. And so it is that the teaching of Sanatan Dharma is essentially one, and all times of India, which is when this teaching originated, they had an intuitive view of life. They saw all things as part of manifestation of the same spirit, and the different philosophies that they evolved are only different emphasis that are given to this path of God to enlightenment. Let's pick up the first aphorism of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, which is, now we take up the teachings of yoga. And the word now is key here. Now, he's starting a book, but he says now. That means that there is something before that. Now we take up the study of yoga. The reason for that is that there are three basic needs, you might say stages, of the spiritual search. And there are three philosophies: Sankhya, Yoga, and Vedanta. The first stage is summed up in the Sankhya philosophy, which emphasizes the need of man for something more than this world. But before I start with the first philosophy, Sankhya, let me speak about creation, because you must first understand the nature of creation and how God has created it in order to fully comprehend all this. Now, this could take a whole month seminar, but I'll try to summarize it for you in few words. First, as we said, God is Sat Chit Ananda, ever existing, ever conscious, ever new bliss. Now, as the nature of bliss is to share itself, God decided to make a creation, to create diversity of many souls. In the yoga scriptures, we read that when God first created the world, He created it perfect, and then those souls who were out in creation quickly discovered to sit in meditation and merge back again in God in perfect bliss. And then after God has seen this, unfortunately for us, He decided to impose delusion, so He created duality. And because of that, as the nature of this world is duality, or Dvaita, how it's called in Sanskrit, therefore Dvaita is one of the basic aspects of Maya, or delusion. In Dvaita, you will never be able to have permanent happiness and bliss, simply because you will always have the two polar of the opposites. For every pleasure, you will sooner or later inevitably have to experience the exact same amount of pain. For every life you live, you will sooner or later have to experience death. For every hot, you will sooner or later inevitably have to experience the exact same amount of cold. Same thing for black and white, up and down, back and forward, and so on and so forth. For every up, there is a down. For every pleasure, there is a pain. And dwelling into Dvaita, no matter what you do, you will be always caught into this polar of opposites. For every pleasure you are experiencing, it has to be counterpart with the same amount of pain. So the sum of the total at the end balances and comes up to zero at the end. And a part of Dvaita, the yoga scriptures tells us that God has created the wheel of birth and rebirth. So for incarnation after incarnation, the soul is looking for happiness, thinking that it will find it in material possessions, power over others, human relationships, and so on, not realizing that the very fabric of the material world is Dvaita, delusion. And so it is. Many souls are immersed in body consciousness for millions of incarnations, trying and trying. They are like strangers in a foreign land. They insist of monopolizing a small portion of this earth as their very own and seek their happiness outside of themselves, in the senses. And their constant thought is, my body, my home, my wife, my husband, my children, not realizing that they will never be able to find lasting happiness unless they leave everything and try to merge again in the everlasting bliss of spirit. Material entanglement, sweet and mysterious, keeps them dreaming through the sleep of Maya or cosmic delusion. They will forget who and what they really are. Imagining the play to be real and lasting, they weep through the sad parts, grieve that the happy parts cannot endure, and sorrow that the play must at last come to an end. Suffering will be the punishment for their spiritual blindness. A great saint once said, "Life, for those who don't know how to handle it, is a terrible machine. Sooner or later, it cuts them to pieces." And so Sankhya talks about Dvaita or duality, about Maya, about delusion, about the inadequacies of this world, about how the more you seek, the less you find, and speaks of the need for waking up from this material delusion. Your native country is the omnipresence of spirit, which is free of duality and its infinite happiness and bliss. On earth, you are but a traveler. You are just guest on a brief visit, and that's what Sankhya tells you. And so it is, the individual soul, or the jiva, how it's called in Sanskrit, after millions of reincarnation, after countless of tries and errors, finally realizes that it will never be able to find lasting fulfillment outside of spirit. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna, teaching yoga to Arjuna, says, "Many incarnations we have passed, O dear Arjuna. I remember all of them, but you do not." So once you've been convinced that you really do want to get out of it, this philosophy alone doesn't take you to infinite bliss in God. The good news for you is that if you are watching this video, you are one of those old souls. If you are looking for the definite answer to everlasting happiness, it means that you already have tried everything and you have realized that there must be another way other than the material. And there is. It's called yoga. After you are convinced that you do want something more, then comes the next stage, yoga. Yoga is that practice which helps you to attain perfection in spirit, to break the boundaries of the ego, and to become forever free of duality and delusion, to attain the highest level of perfect bliss, which the senses can never reveal to you. The supreme goal of yoga is transcendence of the ego and the final union with the eternal spirit beyond creation. After yoga comes the next philosophy, which is Vedanta. Vedanta is the philosophy which addresses and speaks about those truths that are beyond the senses. It describes what spirit or God is. It tells you that you are not your body and you are not your mind, you are that infinite spirit. It describes the vision of the infinite, the vision of samadhi, the vision of oneness with all, the vision of Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, I am that infinite consciousness which is beyond creation, of which this whole creation was evolved. Vedanta tells you that how this universe is only a dream in the mind of the Creator, and how all things were brought into manifestation from His thoughts. Everything in this universe was first created as thought, that is the causal universe. It was then manifested as energy, that's the astral universe, and then the energy became manifested as the physical universe. It tells you that everything ultimately is that spirit. So first is Shankya, the philosophy that tells you what you need to get out of state of limitation. Then yoga is the science of how to get there, and Vedanta tells you what you're looking for. Vedanta talks from the highest view down, Shankya talks from the lowest view up, and yoga talks of that method in between which will take you from one world to the other. So then, the second aphorism in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras is Yoga's Chitta Vritti Nirot. Yoga is the neutralization of the waves of feeling, of consciousness. Which means that you don't have to unite your consciousness with the infinite, because you are already infinite. You are spirit, you are bliss, you are a part of God. So how something which is a part of God can be other than God Himself? The only difference is that you are identified with the body and think that you are it. And so by practicing the real yoga, which I will talk about later, will only make your mind still enough to be able to reflect that infinite within you. Yoga shows you that you don't learn truth, you unlearn error. You don't become wise, you merely stop being foolish. Because as Vedanta tells you, you are that already. You are the infinite joy, you are divine love, you are everything that you want to attain. But what happens is that the restless mind has become limited. When the soul descends into the body, it becomes identified with it. That's the ego. The restless mind is looking at little things and sees only those little things and forget the great potential that is in itself. So in school you have to learn, but in yoga you have to unlearn. Unlearn this thought. I'm a body, I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm rich, I'm poor, I'm a banker, I'm even a yogi. Learn not to think too much in those terms, but to understand and say, I'm the infinite, expressing itself in those different ways. That's the beginning of a true yoga practice. When the waves of your consciousness become completely still and you reflect that infinite, then you will know that that's what you really are. Then you will experience what is true happiness, what is infinite bliss. So the first step to a true yoga is for you to get rid of those ways of thought, get rid of those ups and downs or feeling, and really chitta above all means feeling. And it refers even more than thought, it refers to the likes and dislikes of the heart. As Saint Augustine quoted, "Thou hast made us for thyself, O Lord, and our hearts are restless until they find their rest in thee." Here is an example of, on how a person is caught in this great delusion or maya, how it's called in Sanskrit. That explanation will help you to understand more clearly where you are now and what you can do about it in order to get rid of delusion and to go toward enlightenment or bliss. Let's imagine for a moment that there is a mirror reflecting a car. If the mirror is reflecting a car and there is nobody to see the car in the mirror, it'll be just there, not really saying anything. But then, let's say we have a person looking and he says, "Oh, that's a car." And now imagine that person is you. Then, if you, who is looking, are not particularly interested in cars, you may not even notice what kind of a car it was, what model, color, and later in a little while you might even forget what was you saw earlier, which means that this car clearly couldn't make that much of an impression in your mind. You merely defined it for a moment and then you forgot about it. This event doesn't bind you. But if this was your car, you'll say, "Oh, this is my car." And in the way, there are lots of things that you own and you can identify in your mind as being yours, but that still doesn't bind you. If you were to lose them, you'd say, "Well, they are not mine now, so it doesn't matter." The mere thought of its being yours is not yet really delusion, but when you see the car there and you say, "It's my car," and "Oh, I'm so glad to see my car," that's when you're caught. That's what delusion is really all about. Likes and dislikes of the heart, not the definitions of the mind. When you like and dislike things in this world and attach yourself in them, thinking that these are the source of your happiness, that's when you're really caught and you will never be able to find lasting happiness. Why? Because, as we said before, this world is based on Dvaita, duality. If you own something and you think it makes you happy, one day, sooner or later, you will lose it, and also the imaginary happiness along with it. Material things end up in two ways. They end up leaving you, or you end up leaving them, either by financial loss or health, or when you leave this world. The yoga scriptures say Maya or delusion is consistent in only one thing. It always breaks its promises at the end. The more material desires you have, the less happiness you will achieve. One yoga guru once said a brilliant definition of this. He said, "We learn a lot from frustrated desires, but we learn much more when our desires are fulfilled." Why? Because even when our desires are finally fulfilled, we then realize that this is not going to bring us happiness either. As Yogananda used to say, desires ever fed are never satisfied. Desires create misery. A saint immersed in yoga meditation is perfectly blissful within himself, and he doesn't need anything external in order to experience bliss. He may possess material things and enjoy them, but he is not bound by them. His bliss is not dependent on whether or not he is going to lose them, which he will eventually. He is calmly detached from duality. When a worldly person thinks, "Oh, but when I get this red sports car, then I'll be truly happy," doesn't realize that he merely created a condition of his own mind by thinking, "I'm not perfectly happy because I don't have it yet," not realizing that it's the desire that caused the thought of unhappiness in the first place. It's sort of like you take a pinch of your own flesh and you squeeze tight for a few seconds, which creates pain. Then you suddenly release and you feel a relief. But the thing is, you were perfectly relieved before you have pinched your skin in the first place. The more people look outwardly, the more they think that they are getting happiness, but they don't understand it's a reflection of themselves. To prove that point, just go ahead and observe famous and rich people. See if they are really happy and how long their happiness lasts. That's why there are much more suicidal rate among rich people than there is among poor people. Because poor people still have this kind of hope, the thought that when I finally get the object of my desire, be there wealth or fame or power, then I'll be truly happy, which never happens, even after this desire have been fulfilled. And so it is, the Yoga scriptures tells us that the jiva, the individual soul, goes through millions if not billions of incarnations looking for real joy until one day it, as Paramhansa Yogananda told it realizes a sense of anguishing monotony. That's the moment when the soul realizes that it was looking for real joy in the wrong place, that true joy can be only found within, and it begins its quest for yoga or union with the divine. What we have to understand is that we are the cause of any happiness that we find in life. It's an idea that we have in our mind. Understand that everything in this world is only a reflection of your own joy. Yoga teaches that you are this, and what you have to do is get rid of all these wrong impressions in your mind that keep you from understanding who and what you really are. Real yoga starts when you begin to look higher and you realize that the little temporary joy from fulfilled material desires is only a reflection of an inner infinite joy. Yoga helps you to more and more make your mind calm so you can begin to gather that joy into a central focus within, where you find a calm, infinite and unchanging bliss. By practicing yoga, you come to that point of understanding that you will only find infinite joy by neutralizing the whirlpools of your consciousness. If you could neutralize all these oppositional states of consciousness, you would find that love, that joy, all these experiences don't have opposites if they spring from within yourself. Yoga's Chitta Vritti Nirod. Yoga is the neutralization of the whirlpools of feeling. This is what the path of yoga is really all about. So, yoga doesn't really mean uniting your consciousness with something up there or something out there. Yoga means uniting yourself with yourself, uniting your lower nature with your higher nature, becoming completely one within yourself. Yoga means union. In that state of complete self-union with yourself, you already will be that state of being one with God. So how do we do that? How do we approach God? This I will show you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching this video, and remember, love God, keep Him always in your thoughts, practice your sadhana and live in joy. If you have received this divine inspiration in your heart and you want to learn more about how to go faster to God, live in ever new joy and achieve infinite bliss, go to the next video here. God bless you. Namaste.